We're going to move on to what often we hear from pipeline operators is the most interesting session of the conference, and that's where we hear from actual landowners who have been impacted one way or another. So I'm going to ask them to come up, and I'm going to turn the microphone over to a new facilitator because everybody's tired of listening to me jibber jabber. And I don't think his name ended up on it, but Jeffrey Insko, who actually runs a pipeline blog in Michigan, is going to facilitate this session, and we're going to hear from landowners from Vermont, Arkansas, and Michigan. If I can find the stuff. Who's going first?
Let's see who's going first. That's good. Ann, is that okay? Yeah, I figure we'll just go in order. Is that okay, you guys? So Ann, Dave, and
All yours.
thanks, Carl. Thanks, Carl. In fact, double thanks to Carl. I want to just take a minute to thank Carl and Rebecca and Samia, the trust. I know as a landowner myself that I speak for a lot of landowners when I say that it means a great deal that the trust gives us a kind of forum to have a voice in these discussions, because I think one of the experiences of landowners is often feeling alone and isolated and as if no one is kind of listening. So in that regard, the trust is invaluable to us. And I'd also like to just once again thank Sean and Craig and the folks at Marathon for the measures that they're taking to listen. And it's cool to hear that people snatched up all that stuff. I hope that they're going to follow suit. So I'll just quickly mention who we've got here, and then I'll shut up and let them take over. So Ann Jarrell is a resident of Mayflower. She's done this sort of great effort in informing the public about the kind of aftermath of the Mayflower spill. And she does this on this really great Facebook page, the Mayflower Oil Spill Diaries. It's really cool. It's a great kind of clearinghouse for information. And that sort of initiative, connecting landowners to landowners, is really valuable. That's something I learned in my experience. And Ann's doing a great job of that. So she's doing such a great job at that she's going to be profiled in Arkansas Life magazine in December. So on newsstands soon. Then Dave Gallagher, a friend of mine, a resident of Ceresco, Michigan, like me. He's on the Enbridge Line 6B route. And his experience, as you're going to see, is a fairly harrowing one. And so Dave's been talking about his experience in valuable ways as well. And lastly, Jennifer Baker, who's a resident of Moncton, Vermont. And like so many of us, she too is a kind of accidental pipeline safety advocate. And as she'll explain, she's worked with the trust and with local conservation groups on routing issues of a gas pipeline. So the last thing I want to say is that these three people, there's only three of them, but they represent hundreds, if not thousands, of other people who are experiencing and find themselves in the crosshairs or in other ways working with operators and others on important matters. And so I admire them tremendously. And please listen.
Thank you. And Carl Fimza, thank you for inviting me to come. I have learned so much in the last day and a half that I've been here. So whenever I get over to the comments where I'm saying, okay, y'all need to be sure and do this and this and this, you've already got all of that covered. So, but I'm going to go ahead and do my presentation the way I have it written. So on Good Friday, March the 29th, I was at work and my daughter and new grandson that was born on December 11th were at my house where they had been living since the birth of Logan, so I could help take care of both of them. Jennifer called me at work and told me I need to come home. There were police and fire trucks everywhere. It smelled really bad, like a gas leak. So I drove home, and the smell was getting stronger the closer I got to my house. When I walked into the house, Jennifer was frantically packing a bag for her and bags for Logan, and she told me, pack a bag so we can get out of here fast. And I asked her why she thought we should leave. Had somebody told her we need to evacuate? And she said, no, but they taught her in school, if you can hear it, see it, smell it, or touch it, you need to leave the area immediately. But I wanted to confirm we should leave, so I called the Mayflower Police Department, and they told me, and I told them that we had headaches, we were nauseous, the smell was terrible, do we need to evacuate? And the gentleman on the line said, "Do you have oil on your land?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Then you do not need to evacuate." Jennifer was still arguing in the background, saying, "Well, if this is a gas leak, we need to leave." And so I asked him, "Is this a gas leak?" And he said, "No. This is a oil leak, and what we're smelling was the smell they put in the oil lines, just like they do the gas lines, so they can tell when they're leaking." So we stayed. A few days later, there was a couple of Exxon trucks out next to my driveway, and so I went up to try to find out some information. I had not been told anything other than what I saw on the news. And so I went up to the lady and was talking to her some and was telling her, "Hey, we've got really bad headaches, we're nauseous. You know, I've got a 3-month-old baby at my house. Is it okay for us to stay here?" And she said, "Oh, that smell will go away in a couple of days. You'll be fine. It's nothing to worry about." So we stayed. Over the next few days, our small little town of approximately 2,200 residents turned into a nightmare. There were people everywhere in hard hats, orange or yellow vests. There was oil in the parking lots and on the roads, and several roads were closed off to the public. On the day of the spill, I-40 and other streets were closed down, so people were sitting in their vehicles at a dead stop. Several people that were stopped had to sit and breathe in the terrible stench, were complaining of headaches, nausea, breaking out with hives, blurry vision. But fortunately for them, they only had to endure this for a few hours, a short period of time. There were 22 houses that had their residents ordered to be evacuated, but there were several others in the Northwood subdivision that chose by themselves to self-evacuate because of the symptoms of the toxic fumes. I know it was upsetting for them to have to just grab a few items and leave and to be put up at hotels or stay with friends and relatives, but it was also very upsetting to be left behind. There were some residents that were told a hotel room would not be covered for them because the air quality test showed to not be above a level of concern, and they did not have oil on their property. Since so many of us were sickened by the toxic fumes, I believe the level of concern should be reviewed by qualified personnel that has experience and is qualified to make a call on what constitutes a level of concern. With the mix of so many toxic chemicals for residents that are breathing it in 24/7 every day, using guidelines for workers that are only breathing it in 8 hours a day and then breathing clean air at night is not the same guidelines that should be used in these cases for residents. My family and several of our neighbors became very sick, and no one contacted us. I called the Arkansas Health Department and was told they would not take our information. I needed to call a different number. I needed to call a different department. I was transferred around 7 times. I was not informed of any meetings until I saw on the news at night that they'd had a meeting. The neighbor of mine tried to attend a meeting and was told it's only for the residents of the Northwood subdivision. So I could only get in the meeting if you were in Northwoods. Over the next several weeks, Jennifer had 2 seizure-type events and went to the emergency room and was given muscle relaxers. Logan, my grandson, was using 2 inhalers, one every 2 hours, an electronic suction machine to suction him when he started choking because it would make you cough and cough and cough and cough. And as adults, we can cough it up enough to where we can finally spit it out. But when he got it up that far, he was choking on it. He could not breathe. So he had to have a monitor so she could hear him 24/7 and go in there and suction him when he started choking. He was also given medication for his infected lungs and antibiotics and has made several trips to the doctor and to the emergency room. The doctor had finally said that he didn't know what else to do. He needed to find a specialist. He's now down to using an inhaler once in the morning and once at night until spring when they will reassess his lungs. I have had multiple health issues. My thyroid levels were high for both TSH and T4 levels, I had headaches so bad I would wake up crying in the middle of the night. My eyes were so blurry I was afraid of driving. I was coughing so much that I lost my voice. I felt lightheaded, could not remember or articulate my thoughts, and had to cancel a training class because I just could not teach. I could think up here what I wanted to say, but I couldn't say it. I made several trips to my doctor, trying different meds to try to get rid of the headaches, and nothing worked. On Monday, August the 19th, I called in sick to work again because my head was hurting so bad. I was throwing up, having diarrhea, blurry vision, lightheaded, felt so tired that all I wanted to do was just sleep. But I couldn't because of all the coughing. And I was having trouble breathing, even using both of my inhalers. So on Tuesday, August 20th, I managed to drag myself to the doctor, and he said I was running a fever. He heard wheezing in my lungs. I had infected lungs and laryngitis. I could not talk over a whisper at that time. He put me on antibiotics and more medicines and told me to not go back to my house. He told me to find a friend to stay with and do not go to work. Just rest and come back and see him that Friday. So Friday when I saw him, I was feeling some better. I could talk some. And he told me I was not to return to my house. I asked if I could just run in and grab a few things, and he said, no, get a friend or someone to go get what you need. I do not want you to return to your house ever. The toxins that build up and are stored in your fat cells that just take a few breaths of the toxic fumes would make me just as sick as I was the previous Tuesday. So I am feeling better since I have not lived in my house since August 20th. So I pay for a house I cannot live in, and I have no idea what the future holds for me. The not knowing is the hardest part, especially since I continue to have health issues. I have the following recommendations, but like I said, after what I've learned the last few days, which has been tremendous, one, city and town representatives should all have an evacuation plan in place before it is needed, with a list of phone numbers, ADEQ, EPA, Game and Fish, etc. These officials need to know what is flowing through the pipes in that area before the spill. The people at our Unified Command did not know what was in the pipelines. They need a hazmat safety data sheet that describes each chemical and lists all chemicals they're dealing with. They need to make sure there is a doctor that is trained in chemical exposures in every state and every big city that has a pipeline close by. Appropriate equipment and training for the state officials, local government, health department, EPA, pipeline workers should be put in place so they can monitor all chemicals that are in the pipeline. Many of these chemicals are not seen in parts per million, but are toxic in parts per billion. So monitors should all read in parts per billion. The level of concern needs to be reevaluated, and I've covered that. All chemicals should be included in this study, to include the PAHs, benzene, etc., plus all of the toxins that are in the oil itself. You need to have and train on evacuation processes, including knowing which way the wind is blowing. If you can touch, see, or smell the chemicals, those residents need to be evacuated. Several of the chemicals in the mix are airborne and hang close to the ground like a fog and can travel quite a distance before they're dissipated to a non-toxic level. I think a standard radius of evacuation around the spill site or rupture point or anywhere the oil actually is a good approach. Different toxins will call for a different radius of evacuation, of course. Regular maintenance should be required on all pipelines to make sure they're safe and there's not an area of concern. Pipeline safety is a public health issue, and the regulating agencies, DOT and PHMSA, need to have resources in place to enforce current regulations consistently for every pipeline in the country. Boots on the ground. Have a force ready to go door to door and check on the residents and give them information. This includes outlying area residents within, for example, at least a quarter-mile to a half-mile radius of the source of the toxins, depending on what the chemicals are, no matter which way the prevailing wind blows. These boots on the ground will educate people on the incident and provide them with evacuation information and or any meetings that are planned that they may want to attend. They need to have a phone number that's listed, given to the residents to call if they're having health issues. Make sure that it is clear that this number is for health questions or to report health-related issues, and do not call it a poison control number that does not mention health information at all. Hold meetings for all of the residents to answer any questions they may have and to give them information. The not knowing what's going on, not being given any information is more stressful than not knowing you should leave, or if you will be able to stay without immediate or long-term health impacts. I did not know we were breathing toxic chemicals until April 22nd, when I attended the Earth Day hosted by the Faulkner County Citizens Awareness Group. I became hysterical, called my daughter, and told her, "You were right, we should have left." Pack up you and the baby and go live with your brother. My story is only one of hundreds of the people who have been affected by this pipeline rupture. I'm speaking to you today as a mother and a grandmother. I want you to hear the voice of your own mother, your grandmother, speaking to you as if it's your loved ones that have been living in Mayflower and have been exposed to the fumes, enduring physical illness for weeks on end, and now live with the anxiety of not knowing the long-term effects. What would you want for them? I want you to understand that many of the residents of Mayflower, myself included, trusted the information and guidance that we received from government officials and industry representatives. We believed when they said breathing the air was safe and the level of chemicals detected was not harmful. What I understand now, what has become clear since the time of the pipeline rupture, is that the health of my community has been compromised. The information we were given was inaccurate and incomplete, and that our trust was misplaced. I hope that in these few remarks you have been inspired to review procedures and guidance given to citizens impacted or exposed to oil and the related toxic chemicals, and that you will make it your personal mission to protect the health of individuals and communities who will face the next pipeline rupture. Thank you.